The country schools of that time had to close and let their pupils go wherever a rich local farmer required child labour on his land. One of a family struck lucky and called attention to themselves, wearing new boots and clothes at an unusual time of the year. The only acceptable time was after harvest, when most people's money was better. They could expect the parson or squire to stride into their house after church and lift the lid off the pot in which Sunday's dinner was cooking to make sure they were not living above their station on meat bought from the butchers, poached from the woods. But these powerful men did not go about in fear of their lives, nor did their child play landlord and tenant, a game like cowboys and Indians. "I'll show you a capital game," said a little boy of 6 on holiday from Ireland to a Parisian girl of 7. "You be landlord and I'll kill you with my gun." No Irish landowner would have looked into a pot. The Victorian parent-child discipline had no place there, and anyway, only about 1/3 of their number lived on their estates. Those that did, and the agents of the absentees, carried loaded pistols, always visible, and many never left their houses without an armed escort. In the 12 months before the Grand National of 1881, 1,000 cases of boycotting had been reported from the 32 countries of Ireland, and 200 of these, a fifth of the total, happened in County Roscommon, where Woodbrook was. These figures were included in the sum of nearly 3,000 agrarian outrages, an expression used to include every act from murder to resisting eviction. Colonel Tom lived there, lived near 3 of the most hated men in Ireland: Colonel King Harman of Rockingham, a mile away, Colonel Kingston of Kilronan, and Earl of Leitrim, Colonel of the Leitrim Regiment, who had a lot of land and made a lot of fuss near Carrick. Leitrim was ambushed and shot dead on his way to evict tenants on his distant estate in Donegal. King Harman, though a supporter of Home Rule, was one of those who tried to rouse Westminster to a policy of indiscriminate revenge. Draconian punishments he inflicted on his tenants remain a local legend. The young Lord Kingston allowed his agent, Tatlow, to enforce evictions by the cruelest method. Wilfrid Scawen, Blunt, the English poet, ever witnessed in his travels through Ireland. I cannot point out whether Colonel Tom evicted people from his part of the plains of Boyle or nearby. The plains were certainly cleared of inhabitants long before Charlie inherited the estate, or from his distant lands in County Sligo, but on the home farm he was certainly not as unpopular as his surviving neighbour, nor had his forebears ever been, in spite of several cruel acts. Their estates were small, and everybody living on them knew them personally, but none, before or after him, could rival the popularity of Uncle Tom. He was, they say, by nature kindly and amusing, but so were other members of the family. Tom's glorious distinction was on the racecourses of England. The whole district basked in its reflection. Their little stable reportedly beat all the dukes and princes on the far side. Everyone, for miles around, put money on the Woodbrook horses, and names now long forgotten by the rest of the racing world are still remembered by their grandchildren. Paddy Mare, Apollo Belvedere, Phaeton, King of Usma, and best of all, the White Knight. It seems now like a record of continuous success, but the quarter of a century between Woodbrook and the White Knight included many years of failure. At the end of the century, Uncle Tom's fortunes, instead of leaping, sagging, sinking, rising as they always had, began to flicker towards bankruptcy. When the White Knight, a rather ugly foal, was born in 1903, it seemed as if the stables, house and land would have to be sold before he was reared. Creditors, kept off for years by the promise of another win, began their work of rapine, and none of the family dreamt that the foal could save them. Even its pedigree seemed likely to stand in the way of success. Buckshot, its maternal grandsire, was a fearfully bad-tempered animal, and Pella, its dam, was of unfashionable breeding. Tom would have sold it as a yearling for £10 or £20 if a friend whose judgment he'd respected had not offered £50. This made him keep it. In 1905, the White Knight won the, excuse my pronunciation, the Curragh Grand Prize for 2-year-olds in 1906, the Ascot Gold Vase, and the Newmarket Autumn Handicap. In 1907, the ancient Gold Cup, the Goodwood Cup, the Epsom Coronation Cup, and the Newmarket March Day